The night was still. The stars sparkled high above, and the desert wind whispered quietly across the land. Everything seemed peaceful, until a deep, terrifying roar shattered the silence. A lion had entered the village. Jamal, an old farmer, was walking back to his home after a long day of work. He froze. His heart began to race, thumping in his chest. In the darkness ahead, two glowing eyes appeared, sharp, hungry eyes. A lion was watching him, its body low to the ground, preparing to attack. Jamal felt a wave of fear wash over him. There was no weapon in his hands, no way to defend himself. He was alone. Or so he thought. Then, through the haze of fear, Jamal heard the sound of hooves against sand. It was Barq. His camel. His faithful companion. Barq had been with Jamal for many years, carrying heavy loads, working under the hot sun, and never complaining. But tonight, Barq was about to do something Jamal never expected. The lion growled, its eyes burning with hunger. It moved closer, its powerful paws making no sound against the desert ground. Every step was one closer to Jamal. And then Barq stepped forward, putting himself between Jamal and the lion. Jamal's throat tightened. He wanted to shout, "Run, Barq," but the words wouldn't come. Fear held him still. All he could do was watch. The lion's eyes flickered between Jamal and Barq, its mouth opening wide in a menacing snarl. It seemed to hesitate for a moment. Was it surprised by Barq's bravery? Or did it think the camel would run? But then, the lion pounced. Barq didn't flinch. Instead, Barq stood tall. His long legs planted firmly in the sand. And then, a sound Jamal had never heard before, a deep, powerful bellow that shook the ground beneath them. The lion paused, confused. It wasn't used to this. Was the camel not afraid? Without warning, Barq charged. The lion couldn't believe its eyes. It tried to turn, but Barq was faster. With a thunderous impact, Barq slammed into the lion with his strong chest, knocking it back. The lion growled in pain, stunned by the force of the blow. But Barq wasn't done. He stomped hard, sending a spray of sand flying into the lion's face. Barq kicked with all his might, his powerful legs hitting the lion with a force that made the beast stumble. The lion roared in fury and pain, but Barq didn't give up. He kept charging, pushing the lion back step by step, refusing to let it near Jamal. Finally, the lion paused. It looked at the camel, its fierce eyes now wide with confusion. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the lion turned and ran into the darkness. Jamal stood frozen in shock. His mind couldn't comprehend what had just happened. His camel, his gentle Barq, had saved his life. Jamal rushed to Barq, his legs shaky. His heart was still racing. The camel stood, breathing heavily, his legs wobbling from the fight. He had never fought before, but tonight, he had stood his ground. Jamal gently touched Barq's side, checking for wounds. The camel had some bruises, but nothing serious. Still, Jamal couldn't believe the courage he had witnessed. "Barq," Jamal whispered, his voice cracking. "You saved my life. You didn't run. You stayed." Barq let out a tired grunt, as if to say, "Of course I did." That night, Jamal didn't sleep. He sat beside his camel, stroking his fur, whispering his thanks again and again. His loyal companion, the one he had seen as just a worker, had proven that loyalty was more than just a word. It was a promise. A promise to stand by someone, no matter the cost. The next morning, the village buzzed with the story. People came from miles around to see Barq, the camel who had faced down a lion. They patted him, fed him treats, and called him a hero. But Jamal knew the real lesson that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Barq could have run. He could have saved himself. But he didn't. He stayed. He fought. He protected the one who had always cared for him. Jamal realized then, true courage is not about strength or size. It's about heart. True bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's standing up for those you love, even when you're scared. And true loyalty can change everything. Barq wasn't just a camel. He was a warrior in disguise. A silent protector who had saved a life. And that night, under the quiet stars, Jamal knew that no matter what came next, he would never forget the lesson Barq had taught him. In the hardest moments, loyalty and courage are the greatest strength you can have.